In 2008, researchers observing a group of chimpanzees in Senegal watched something that changed how they thought about animal behavior. A male chimpanzee, one they had been following for years, one they knew by name, left his group alone and moved silently through the forest toward the territory of a neighboring community. He found a juvenile from the rival group, isolated and unprotected. The attack was methodical, unhurried. When it was over, he walked back to his group without displaying the agitated excitement that typically follows chimpanzee conflict. He showed no signs of distress, no signs of arousal, nothing that looked like remorse. The researchers didn't know what to call what they had witnessed. They still don't. For most of human history, we have drawn a clean line between human violence and animal violence. Animals kill because they must, for food, for territory, for survival. The killing is functional. The suffering is incidental. There is no cruelty in a lion bringing down a wildebeest because cruelty requires something the lion supposedly lacks, a mind that knows what it is doing to another mind and chooses to continue anyway. Psychopathy, in the clinical sense, is precisely that. Not violence, not aggression. Something more specific, a reduced capacity for empathy combined with fearlessness, a tendency toward manipulation, and an absence of guilt that allows harmful behavior to continue without the internal break that stops most people. The question of whether animals can be psychopaths is not really a question about violence. It is a question about what is happening inside the mind behind the behavior. Start with empathy, because empathy is the foundation of the whole discussion. For a long time, empathy was considered uniquely human. Then researchers started testing it. Rats placed in chambers where they could free a trapped companion did so consistently, even when the trapped rat was a stranger, even when there was no food reward for doing it. They worked to release something that was suffering, for no reason except that it was suffering. Elephants have been documented standing beside dying herd members for hours, returning to the bones of dead companions years later in what looks unmistakably like mourning, attempting to lift fallen individuals, sometimes long after death makes lifting futile. And certain primates show measurable physiological stress responses when watching companions experience pain. Their cortisol levels rise, their heart rates increase. The suffering of another individual produces a biological response in the observer. None of this proves animals experience empathy exactly as humans do. What it does establish is that many species are not emotionally indifferent to one another. The suffering of one individual can register in another. The emotional state of one can affect the state of others nearby. And if empathy exists as a variable across individuals and species, if some have more and some have less, then the question follows almost inevitably: what happens at the low end? Animal personality research has been one of the quiet revolutions of behavioral science over the last 30 years. It used to be considered anthropomorphic, sloppy, unscientific to talk about animal personalities. Then researchers started measuring behavioral consistency across situations and time and found it everywhere. Fish, birds, octopuses, the same individual reliably bold or reliably cautious, reliably aggressive or reliably affiliative across contexts that should theoretically produce different responses. Animals have personalities, not in the sense of favorite music or political opinions, in the sense of stable, measurable, individually consistent behavioral tendencies that make one member of a species predictably different from another member of the same species in the same environment. Once personality variation was established, the next question was whether that variation mapped onto anything recognizable. In 2012, a team of researchers at the University of Michigan applied a modified version of the Psychopathy Checklist, the standard clinical tool used to assess psychopathy in humans, to a group of chimpanzees. They were looking for a cluster of traits: bold, fearless behavior, reduced social bonding, high levels of manipulative behavior, low anxiety in situations that reliably produce anxiety in others. They found it. Not in all the chimpanzees, not even in most of them, but in a consistent subset, a cluster of traits that mapped recognizably onto the human psychopathy profile appeared reliably and stably across time. The researchers were careful not to claim these chimpanzees were psychopaths. They were claiming something more specific and more interesting. that the behavioral architecture underlying psychopathy in humans appears to have a functional analog in at least one other primate species. But dolphins actually complicate everything. Dolphins have brains large relative to body size that rival primates. They recognize themselves in mirrors, one of the most reliable indicators of self-awareness available to behavioral science. They maintain long-term social relationships, form shifting alliances, remember individuals across years of separation, and engage in forms of cooperative behavior that require modeling the mental states of others. They are, by almost any measure, sophisticated social minds. They also, in multiple locations across multiple decades, have been documented attacking and killing harbor porpoises in ways that have no clear functional explanation. The porpoises are not eaten. The attacks are not defensive. They are sustained, they are organized, and they appear to involve coordination between multiple dolphins working together toward an outcome that serves no obvious survival purpose. Researchers have proposed competition, redirected aggression, and practice for infanticide as possible explanations. None of them fully fit the data. What nobody has been able to establish is what the dolphins experienced during these episodes, and that is the problem that sits at the center of this entire question. Behavior is not enough. Two individuals can perform identical actions from completely different internal states. One human who harms another may feel intense guilt that drives them toward repair. Another may feel nothing, no guilt, no discomfort, no recognition that anything requiring repair has occurred. The behavior is identical. The psychology behind it could not be more different. Psychopathy lives in that gap, in the internal state rather than the external action. A cat playing with a mouse before killing it looks, from the outside, like cruelty. The mouse suffers. The cat prolongs the suffering, but the cat is almost certainly not experiencing pleasure derived from awareness of the mouse's suffering. It is running a hunting behavior loop that evolved over millions of years, a loop that requires a live moving target to keep running. The cat has no model of the mouse's interior experience. It cannot be enjoying the mouse's pain because it almost certainly has no concept of what the mouse's pain is. This is where anthropomorphism becomes the real danger. Humans are extraordinarily good at projecting mental states onto things that may not possess them. We see a face in a cloud. We apologize to furniture we bump into. We attribute intentions to animals that may be operating entirely without them. The discipline required to study animal minds scientifically is the discipline of sitting with genuine uncertainty, of refusing to conclude more than the evidence supports in either direction. Not claiming animals are more like us than the evidence shows, but also not claiming they are less like us than the evidence shows. Both errors have consequences. So, can animals be psychopaths? The traits associated with psychopathy, fearlessness, reduced empathy, social manipulation, absence of guilt, exist in animals. They exist as measurable variables. They exist in individuals rather than species, meaning some members of a given species show them markedly more than others. They appear to be heritable. They appear to be stable across time. What remains unknown is whether those traits combine in animals into the same functional psychological package that they form in humans. Whether the combination produces something that deserves the same name, whether the internal experience, the felt absence of guilt, the felt indifference to suffering, is present, or whether only the behavioral output is. The chimpanzee who walked back to his group without agitation after that methodical attack in Senegal, was something missing, or was something simply different? That question may be unanswerable with the tools currently available, but the fact that it cannot be answered doesn't make it unimportant, because the line we drew between human minds and animal minds was always more comfortable than it was accurate. And every time science looks closely at that line, it finds it less clear than it appeared from a distance. The chimpanzee is still out there, somewhere in the forest, and we still don't know what to call what he did.